About things that happen in your life and how you respond to things, or you're a strong person, where does that come from? And looking now into my history, it's like, okay, I come from a very strong background. You know, African Americans have always been strong people, and so are Native Americans, so I can't help acting sometimes the way that I do. Community and within the Native community, there's so many similarities just in history, I guess. Even though the experience is different, the feeling of what came out of that is, I'm certain, very, you know, similar.
Well, in my own mind, if you are of Indian blood, I mean, you're Indian. That's pretty much it. If you're of blood, you're of blood. I'm very, you know, embarrassingly, I'm very Eurocentric in a lot of my habits and so on. But that ethnically doesn't change what I am. My father's a Yoruba. In the Pacific community, he comes from, in South Carolina, called the Geechee, or Gullah people. The other side of his family is Kitawa. And as far as my mother goes, her grandfather was an Ilocano slave in the railroad here in the 1800s. And when they weren't, you know, necessary anymore, when they were setting up the reservation system in Oklahoma, he was dragged in with a lot of other Filipinos, and they were just marked as native. In his case, he was thrown in with the Cherokee, otherwise known in all languages, the Kitawa people, and married my great-grandmother, and that was that. When I was in kindergarten, they had a color chart on the wall with, you know, the basic stuff, you know, red, green, blah, blah, blah. And we had to write a page on, you know, who we were. So I had to write my name and, you know, what country I lived in, such and such, and what I was. So I said that I was an orange person because I was going on the list, the color list that was above the closet. And the teacher called me up to the desk, and it's like, you can't say that you're orange. There's no such thing as an orange person. And I'm like, yeah, there is. They're brown people. And I pointed to other children in the class, and I said, they're whites, and there was one, you know. And I said, you know, there's other, you know, tan, and I pointed to a couple of, you know, Puerto Rican, you know, girls that were in the class and stuff. And I'm like, that's me, I'm orange. Because as far as I was concerned, you know, I looked orange, right? So that was the closest thing. You know, and even though, you know, I was a child, and it was kind of laughed off as, you know, by some people anyway, that it was, you know, it's a little innocent thing, you know, isn't that cute? Other people were very, very upset by it. My mother was not happy by it. Her thing was, you're black. We live in a black neighborhood, you know, your father's black, you're black, that's it. And, you know, maybe 2 or 3 days later, on a Friday, if I remember correctly, I was brought into the principal's office and I had to talk to a psychologist that was trying to, this woman who was to convince me that I was a black person, that there was no such thing as orange. And I told her that my father might be black, but my mother's Indian, and, you know, my grandma's Indian, and, you know, we always talk about it in the house, being Indian. And it's like, you know, some of us are orange, you know, and it's like, well, why do I have to say that I'm this and that? I'm like, I'm not a black person, I'm not like that. And I pointed to something in the office, and we were in there for a few hours, you know, and it came to that they couldn't convince me, so I actually had to go and see a professional because I had a problem. My circumstances were such that, you know, I had gotten so much, you know, trouble for trying to be open about being, you know, Native, African, and so on, that it got to the point where I couldn't really fight it anymore. So around my first year of high school, I met my first white kids. I went to a vocational high school, and I became a super Uncle Tom. I tried to be as white as possible. Even went to the point of spraying my hair blonde for a while. You know, that bullshit. You know, and you got white guys laughing at me like crazy, but I was trying, you know, like hell. And that lasted until I was about 26. Had some people in my apartment, and while we're drinking wine and cheese and trying to be bourgeois, they flat out got tipsy and told me how they really felt about me. They're like, you know, you're an exceptional, you know, person of color, but you know, you're still of color. You're not really on our level, you know, la la la. And that's when I realized all that ass kissing I did didn't do a damn thing, you know. So I did another 360, and I'm pretty much right back where the hell I started from as far as that goes. Because if you can't accept me for what I am, you know, I think I'm a hell of a nice person, and I have a lot to, you know, to give. So it's like, if you don't want to deal with that because of your confusion over what I am, which is leading to my confusion, you know, then I really don't need you around.
It's hard to describe the feeling, but it was like once I saw the names, I'm like, oh, there's, you know, it's like, yeah. It's like, well, Mama was right. So it's really cool just to have, you know, everything kind of, you know, come together. It's kind of like putting a quilt together, you know, so it's pretty cool.
Oh gosh, this is my great-grandfather. He was married to Loretta, and that his daughter Juanita, and a son Robert, and a stepdaughter Vanilla. And I'm going to print it.
My Cherokee heritage is not listed on there, and I think back then people wanted things to be as simple as possible, so you were either black or not, so it didn't matter if you had Native heritage. I think I will find my Cherokee heritage. Now that I actually have more information, I can ask more questions, better questions, to get more details, I think.
I got a lot of support and concern about my Native American heritage from my grandmother. My mother and father was very casual about it. They didn't press it. But my grandmother was very conscious of this and making aware that I was aware of it. The town I lived in, which is called Amityville, was part Shinnecock and Afro-American. The whole town at that time. The family next door would practice their Native American culture continuously, and I was not, even though my grandmother talked about it a lot. And I said, oh, those Indians next door. She slapped me hard and picked me up and hugged me. I can still feel the slap, but I also enjoy the hug. And to remind me of the fact that I was Native American and never be involved with a prejudice statement, you know, right? I started painting as very early. It was very instinctive. Then I went to Europe. At the same time, there was discovery about my Native American and Afro-American heritage, because I was on the outside looking in at my culture in Europe. And so when I returned That's when I became more dedicated and involved with the creative process, and with the dual culture is what I'm really concerned about, which is very similar in many ways in the United States, even though the African heritage is